In this video, we're going to discuss 5 big questions and plot points that Bioware must address in the next Mass Effect game. Keep watching to see it all.
Probing Uranus.
What's up, everyone? Big Dan here. I'm currently offering limited edition merch that you can pick up at bonfire.com/store/BigDan. There are 2 different designs, I Should Go and Space Waifu. You can get a t-shirt, hoodies, sweatshirt, or women's tee, and customize from several different color options. This is a limited edition run, and the sale ends on Labor Day, September 6th. So get it before it's gone by going to bonfire.com/store/BigDan or clicking on the link in the description. Without further ado, let's dive right in. With the announcement last year that Bioware would be returning to the Milky Way galaxy setting in the next Mass Effect game, a bunch of questions immediately sprung to mind about major events from Mass Effect 3 that must be addressed in some fashion in order to preserve the lore of the franchise. Today I want to explore 5 of these plot points, starting with number 1, the outcome of the Geth-Quarian War. In Mass Effect 3, the player has the opportunity to resolve the conflict between the Geth and Quarians in 3 different ways. You can choose to side with the Quarians, in which case the Geth are completely wiped out over Rannoch, or you can side with Legion and the Geth, which leads to the complete destruction of the Quarian race. Or you can mediate a peace deal between the 2 groups if you've met a specific set of requirements based on your choices in Mass Effect 2 and 3. Ultimately, if any Quarians or Geth are to appear in the next Mass Effect game, then it will immediately beg the question, what happened on Rannoch in Mass Effect 3? If the game is set several centuries after the events of ME3, it might not be top of mind for most people, but even ancient history will come up in conversations, lore entries, etc., especially when it's on such a massive scale as a major war that potentially results in the destruction of an entire race of sentient beings. Think of the Rachni Wars in the original trilogy. It wasn't the first thing people thought about as they went about their days, but people would mention it from time to time, especially the Krogan. And this was an event that happened over 1,000 years before the events in that trilogy. So if you're talking to a Quarian, for instance, and you see them without their suits on, the conflict with the Geth and eventual resettlement of Rannoch will inevitably come up in conversation, especially if the player is given investigative dialogue options to dig further into the lore, as often happens in the Mass Effect games. There are a couple ways Bioware could solve this problem. One is to choose a canon ending to the Geth-Quarian conflict. This would honestly be kind of a bummer, because it will retroactively undercut the weight of the Rannoch missions in Mass Effect 3 when you know that things will eventually play out a specific way in the future. Even if they were to canonize the peace outcome, which most of us like the best, I think it would be a huge mistake because it would inherently undercut one of the biggest choice and consequence outcomes from the original trilogy. The other option would be to allow players to import a world state cataloging the decisions they made in the original trilogy. This would be a massive undertaking from a writing perspective, because they would have to create multiple alternative dialogues, lore entries, etc. from a myriad of choices from the first 3 games. As cool as this could be, I doubt Bioware will implement something that ties them down so thoroughly to the original games. Ultimately, I have the feeling that there will be no Geth in Mass Effect 4, either because Bioware will choose the Quarians as the victor on Rannoch, or because Shepard wiped them all out as a consequence of choosing the Destroy ending during the final moments of Mass Effect 3, which brings me to the next plot point. Number 2, the fate of Commander Shepard. In a recent video, I discussed the possibility of Shepard returning as the main protagonist in Mass Effect 4. While I would personally enjoy this, I don't necessarily think it's the most likely scenario. But even if Shepard isn't in the game, players will want to know what happened to Shepard at the end of Mass Effect 3. In most of the game's endings, Shepard would die as a result of the final choice in the series. However, if the player gathered enough war assets and chose the Destroy ending, then Shepard would survive the events in London at the end of the Reaper War. Bioware may choose to skirt around the issue and just have a few Easter eggs or lore entries, but I think this would be a mistake. Shepard is a legendary figure amongst the fandom, and he's a legendary figure in the in-game universe as well. Being the guy or gal to lead an intergalactic fleet to defeat the Reapers would lead to the commander being talked about for ages. Any military figure would study Shepard and know everything about him. So if the players weren't giving details about Shepard's fate, it would be an incredibly strange omission. What are some questions players might ask about the commander? Did he die on the Citadel at the end of Mass Effect 3, or did he survive? If it's the latter, then what did he do afterwards? What about romance? If he was in a relationship with Liara, will she bring him up? What will she say about him? These plot threads present a major challenge from a writing perspective, especially because everyone's Shepard is different and made a personalized set of decisions. There's no easy answer here, but Bioware will have to address it in some fashion, especially if Shepard is no longer around to speak for himself or herself. Number 3. The Genophage Cure. Just like the Geth-Quarian conflict, players were presented with a few different choices, well, really just 2 choices, regarding the Genophage Cure in Mass Effect 3. The commander would either help to cure the Genophage, or sabotage the cure in order to secure Solarian support against the Reapers. In this case, Bioware may just choose to make the Genophage Cure canon. The vast majority of players chose that outcome, so I wouldn't necessarily blame them for going that route. But still, I'm a little uneasy about huge decisions with branching outcomes being canonized in a new entry in the series, because ultimately, this will need to be addressed if there are going to be Krogan in Mass Effect 4. Over the course of several centuries, the effects of the Genophage decision from the Tuchanka mission will have very different outcomes. Either the Krogan population would explode and likely lead to new Krogan colonies and settlements, or they would potentially go extinct if the Genophage cure was sabotaged. I guess another cure could potentially get developed in the future, that's entirely possible, but the nature of how the Genophage was cured would have to be addressed in the lore at some point, because again, like the Geth-Quarian conflict, it was a big moment that people would talk about and learn in history classes for generations to come. Number 4. The fate of Javik and the Protheans. So will the Protheans return in future Mass Effect games? We know that cloning exists and that Javik was still alive, so it's entirely possible that new Protheans could be made from Javik's DNA. I think it would be very interesting to see a Prothean revival in Mass Effect 4, but it begs the question, how would the Protheans integrate with the larger galactic community? This is something I addressed in my recent video on Leviathan as well. Would the Protheans retain ancient Prothean customs, which are largely lost to time, or would they develop new ones? Perhaps the cloned Protheans wouldn't be as insistent on militaristic domination of the galaxy as their predecessors were. Even if the Protheans do not return in Mass Effect 4, I think the fans will still want to know what happened to our homeboy Javik. There are far less pitfalls to writing a canon story for his character when compared to someone like Shepard. However, there are some variations to his intended life path depending on how much Shepard spoke with him in Mass Effect 3 and whether or not the commander encouraged him to view the Echo Shard or leave it alone. Like, it's entirely possible that the canon ending is the one where he offs himself because he's so depressed by reliving the destruction of the Prothean society and the deaths of the soldiers he commanded through the eyes of the Echo Shard. But I really hope Bioware won't do Javik dirty like that, which brings me to the last point. Number 5. Which ending is canon? I'm assuming that Bioware is going to select the Destroy ending as the canon ending of Mass Effect 3. I mean, Liara didn't have weird glowing green eyes in the trailer, so I think we can rule out Synthesis. We also didn't see a bunch of Reapers actively hanging out during the trailer, only a dead one, so we can likely rule out Control as well. And Liara is still alive, so Shepard didn't refuse and allow the Reapers to win. So that leaves Destroy as the only remaining outcome. Unless Bioware were to adopt indoctrination theory as canon. And I mean, can you imagine how wild that would be? Even though I don't like the endings to Mass Effect 3, I still think it's a bummer if one of them gets canonized, for the same reasons I mentioned earlier. But I guess the unfortunate truth is that Bioware has to do something, otherwise we won't get a new game. So if I had to pick between getting a new Mass Effect game that canonized some big decisions, or leaving the original trilogy and all its decisions alone, but not making the next game in the Milky Way, I gotta go with the former. I want Bioware to make another Mass Effect, even if they end up making a bad game. They've gotta at least make the attempt. I mean, I hope it's good, but that is yet to be seen. At the end of the day, I think we fans will have to accept the concept of having a headcanon of decisions that we like personally as players versus whatever Bioware chooses as the default outcomes for Mass Effect 4. Because there's inevitably going to be a bit of friction there, and I look forward to seeing how Bioware solves some of these challenges. So there you have it, 5 major plot points that Bioware must address in Mass Effect 4. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to Big Dan Gaming for more Mass Effect and RPG videos. And head over to bonfire.com/store/BigDan or click on the link in the description to buy the limited edition merch. The sale ends today, Monday, September 6th. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.